Okay, hello again and welcome. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining. This is our Connecting Construction webinar. We've run a series of in-person events with this, which have been really useful. So we wanted to run another one now and give people the chance to join who can't get in and are coming in remotely. So thanks again. If we could just move to the next slide, John, please. Yeah. This is the four of us that you'll be hearing from, myself most briefly, just after the introductions. We have our friend and colleague Rory from Microsoft joining us, and John and Jason, two of the architects here at Hitachi. And I'm John Britt, and I'm the head of the commercial sectors here at Hitachi. So delighted to include construction within that, which is kind of my pet and favorite, as everyone knows anyway. So it's great for us to just go through this and show an example of what we've done. And if we move to the next slide, John, please. I'll just give a very brief overview of what we're going to go through. So we've worked very closely with Microsoft in the sector for quite some time, and this particular initiative around building low-code apps out that might help a construction organization, and our examples today are all really on-site apps. It's something we've put together with Microsoft, worked very closely on the ideas for the ones that might be most useful to build as examples. And Rory's going to talk through the solution innovation partnership that we've created with Microsoft to go out and do this. Following that, John and Jason are going to go through effectively a showcase, and that's the heart of the session. That'll be most of the time that you'll see today. They're going to take you through a number of scenarios that just show you some of the example apps that we've built, just to demonstrate how you can use a low-code platform to solve individual problems in the sector. And then we'll summarize at the end and close out with the final point. We may or may not get 5 or 10 minutes for questions at the end. We're hoping we do, but we also want to fill the showcase for you and show you as much as we can, which is probably the most interesting part. If we run out of time at the end, we'll be in touch with each of you anyway for any follow-up questions, but we are hoping maybe to take a couple at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rory, and Rory's going to kick off and talk about the partnership that we have and the background to this particular initiative. And please enjoy the hour, and thanks again for joining.
Thanks very much, John. And good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rory Smith. I'm a technical specialist from Microsoft. I work within our business applications team, and I focus really on designing and building solutions for the architecture, engineering, and construction sector. I'm delighted to be talking to you this afternoon in partnership with Hitachi Solutions. And I'm going to begin the session by talking a little bit about some of the forces that we see driving the construction sector forwards at the moment. And now across the enterprise industry, we're seeing disruption at scale like never before. And this is being accelerated by lots of socioeconomic factors, particularly at the moment, with many of our customers asking us to help with common challenges. Typically, these are often challenges involving sustainably winning more work and growing revenues at their organization. Sometimes around optimizing project delivery to improve cash flows, despite those rising material and labor costs that we're seeing at the moment. We're definitely being asked for support around hiring and retaining skilled workers into the industry. We often see people ask us for help around meeting environmental, ethical, and regulatory standards and the challenges of those initiatives that we're always seeing updated. And finally, we're often seeing and being asked for help around developing safer worker experiences for site delivery teams and improving organizational-wide productivity. Ultimately, though, what we're seeing is enterprise construction organizations looking to develop their own technology capabilities that allow them to facilitate innovation and to continue their growth. So what are we doing as Microsoft, and what are our partners doing to help? John, if you could just go to the next slide for me, please. Well, we're providing industry-specific cloud-based solutions that allow construction organizations to meet their challenges of tomorrow, but doing that today. Our unified, intelligent Microsoft Cloud helps construction organizations really reimagine business processes across their operations, focusing on enhancing productivity and leveraging intelligent insights to power modern and connected project-based services. And you'll see 5 key scenarios that we're focusing on. with worker safety and operational productivity enhancements being the focus for our collaboration with Hitachi Solution and for today's webinar. We're absolutely thrilled to have collaborated with Hitachi Solutions and their team of experts to develop a suite of low-code field worker toolings that will specifically improve productivity and safety in the construction industry. Hitachi Solutions bring both industry expertise and technical capabilities to facilitate innovation across your organization. And today you'll see some of the low-code toolings that we've co-collaborated and innovated on together. But before I hand over to John at Hitachi, what is low-code and how can it help in construction? John, if you just go to the next slide for me, please. Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you what Power Platform is in just a few moments' time, but Power Platform really enables innovation across your enterprise. What we're seeing in organizations today is our demand for innovation at site delivery level is really outstripping what can be supplied by our back office IT support teams. Our professional developers are so busy maintaining point solutions, procuring point solutions, which are costly, expensive to deploy, and difficult to maintain, that they have very little time to be able to innovate business processes at the site and transactional level. And that's where we can really leverage citizen developers and Power Platform to enable innovation across the enterprise and innovate processes at the site level to bring about productivity improvements. Just onto the next slide for me, please, John. So before I hand over, just a quick few words on Power Platform, what it is and how you can use it. So Power Platform is our unified platform of low-code tools, which spans across Microsoft Office, Azure, Dynamics 365, and standalone applications. And it helps you to analyze data, build your own solutions, automate processes, and even create virtual agents to transform your construction business. The platform enables citizen developers with really limited coding capabilities to innovate and build new solutions to solve on-site problems faster in an environment and inside a user experience that really feels like PowerPoint and Excel. So we have 5 key components. We have Power Apps, which are traditionally allow you to capture and act on data as part of a process. For example, maybe somebody reporting a safety incident and then guiding them through an incident investigation. We have Power Automate, which allows us to streamline and automate business processes, saving on time and improving productivity. So for example, scanning an invoice and kickstarting the application for payment process. We have Power Virtual Agents, or Power Bots as I call them, which allow for deep conversational engagement with our customers, employees and suppliers, for example. We also have Power BI, which allows us to report on data and take action. For example, maybe a performance report on a site project, so we can see revenues and cash flows and how our project delivery is performing. And then finally, and you don't see this on the screen because we've only just released it, but we have Power Pages, which are highly customizable websites where you might, for example, want to use a website to onboard an externally facing supplier and collaborate with them. Ultimately, Power Platform is a transformative solution because it enables all kinds of developers and employees to collaborate and build their own solutions, whether that's no code, low code, or code first. So that's it from me today. I'm now going to hand you over to John Boehm at Hitachi Solutions, who's going to take over the rest of the demo. Thanks, over to you, John.
Thanks, Rory. Let me just switch my camera on. Yep, good afternoon, everybody. My name's John Boehm, and I'm a pre-sales solutions architect at Hitachi Solutions. So I'm going to go through the first half of the demonstration of the apps that we've built, and then I'll hand over to Jason. But I wanted to start by describing our example construction company, who we've called Contoso Construction. So they're one of the UK's largest independent construction management service providers operating within the UK. They provide a wide range of services, including construction infrastructure, fit out, property services, partnership housing, and urban regeneration. At any one time, they may be managing up to 1,500 different projects. And in terms of their own employees, Contoso Construction employs around about 3,500 employees. But that's not the whole story. on a lot of their different projects, they'll be using contractors to help them on these builds. And so at the moment, the challenges that are facing Contoso Construction are really about managing the costs on their projects. They've noticed an increasing rate of incidents in the workplace on those projects. And so that increases project costs as they're using more temporary labour to fill those holes in their workforce. So Jessica Pearson, who's their Global Operations Delivery Director, has launched a new program called Reboot, and it's designed to introduce new technology to help them improve processes on their work sites and on the projects they work in, and to try and improve the collaboration between Contoso Construction and all of the subcontractors that they use on their projects. So in terms of the personas that we'll be using at Contoso Construction and also for subcontractors, we're going to talk about Jenny Williams. She's the construction project engineer, and she'll be responsible for creating the initial job requirements for the subcontractors, and then she will fire those requirements off to each of the individual subcontractors to complete. The second persona is Dan Jump. He's the construction site manager, responsible for all the day-to-day operations at site. And I guess the key issues for Dan is that he has difficulty managing large teams of both Contoso employees and contractors, and it's hard for him to pull together all the information that he needs to see who's working on site at any particular time, and also to see the contractor teams that are involved in the work as well. The final persona for today is Alan Steiner. He owns his own business, Steiner Steel, and he's going to be the contractor in this example, who's going to interact with Jenny and complete some of the requirements that are necessary before him and his team can even arrive on site to carry out their activities. And I guess for Alan, his key considerations are that he wants to get on with the work and earn the money for doing the work, and he wants to complete all of the administrative activities as quickly as possible. So the three scenarios that we're going to look at today are firstly what we're calling pre-works contractor collaboration. And this is where Jenny will create a job requirement and assign it to the subcontractor. Alan will then pick up that job requirement and respond to all of the requirements before sending that job back to Jenny for her review. And all this will be done using the Power Platform. We'll then I'll hand over to Jason, who'll pick up scenario 2, which is looking at what happens when the contractors arrive on site, how they can deal with task-based risk assessment, and also the processes and the tools that we've given them to log a safety incident. I'll finally finish on scenario 3, and we'll look at a very quick example of how we've used Power Pages to allow the subcontractors to record time on site as they've been working that day. So let's move on to look at scenario 1, which is pre-works collaboration. So very quickly, Jenny's going to issue the job requirement. Then Alan's going to be alerted that he needs to respond to that particular requirement. Once he's done that, Jenny can review and approve his submission, and then Alan will be given permission to proceed on site. And all of this will be done in real time using the Power Platform as the solution to control this process. So let me go into my first app today. So I'm using what we've called the main contractor app, and this is where Jenny will complete the initial information on the job requirement and then assign Alan to complete the rest of the work on this. So it's very simple to start the process off. Jenny's already added a title, which is to install steel beams on site. We also have the ability to store a work package. Now, this could be a work breakdown structure and a code relating to that work breakdown structure from your ERP system. We have a proposed start date of the 5th of December and an estimated duration of 3 days. After she's put in a brief description of the work, which in this case is to install steel beams at spec to selected homes on a new build housing development. So she's got the bare bones of the job requirement entered onto the form now, and all we need to do is to assign our subcontractor. Now I'm going to assign this to myself for the demo, but obviously this would be Alan Steiner in the real world. And let me click on save. Now what's happening now is that there will be a flow that's invoked that's picked up the fact that this job has been assigned to, in this case, me for this example. And I'll be asked to then go into another application to review and complete my activities. So you can see on the bottom of my screen there, I've got a message telling me a new job has been assigned to me. So let me go through to my Power Apps, and I'm going to open a second app here called the Subcontractor app. Now, if I click on my job number 50, installation of steel beams, here we can see I've got an option to either accept the job request or reject the job request. So Alan will review this information and take a decision on whether he wants to actually apply for this work. So I'm going to go ahead and click accept job request. And this now takes me into what we've called the job onboarding process, where Alan will need to go through each of these 4 forms and fill out all the relevant information. Now, in the interest of speed for today, I'm going to open another job that I have completed already, and I'll talk you through each of these stages. So let me open job 51. And going into the methods statement, there are a number of fields that Alan needs to work through and complete. So we have, first of all, a high-level description of works, which is just a number of steps that Alan and his team will follow while erecting the steel frame. We also have the ability to add the personnel that Alan will be using from Steiner Steels to carry out this work. So, for example, here we can see that there are going to be 5 steel construction workers, 2 welders, and a crane operator. Moving on, we have the plant equipment arrangements. So, what is the equipment that Alan and his team are going to need, and what is the protective clothing that his team are going to be using as well? Working environment considerations and safe system of work to be adopted can all be included on this as well. And please bear in mind, as John said at the outset, these are just examples of the types of data that we can capture. We can tailor these applications to collect the data that you need to ensure that your contractors are being onboarded in the correct way. So I'm going to click on save and then move on to the next step in the process, which is risk assessment. I've already created 3 risks. We've got working at height, burns from welding equipment, and handling of steels. If I just open one of these as an example, what we're capturing here is the hazard itself, the type of workers that may be harmed, the initial risk, and then we have a sliding bar, and this allows me to assess the initial likelihood of harm and also the initial severity of impact. And we're just simply multiplying those 2 values together to give us an initial risk rating. Once we've done that, we enter the control measures. So what are we going to do to mitigate those risks? So you can see here, we're going to say that we're going to make it mandatory to wear hard hats, protective gloves, etc., etc. And then we have an opportunity to say, well, once those control measures are in place, what's the new or residual likelihood of harm and the residual severity of impact? And once again, that residual value is just a simple multiplication of those 2 numbers. So returning to the main form, we can see our initial risk 15 highlighted in red because anything over 10, I think, we've defined it as high. And then the residual risk of 5. So we have a color-coded scheme there, 5 to 10 indicating that it's medium risk, green 1 to 4 indicating it's low risk as well. So let me go back and then move on to the credentials section of job onboarding. So this gives Steiner Steel an opportunity to tell Contoso Construction a little bit about the business, the number of years they've been operating, and also to talk a little about the team, their experiences, and some of the qualifications that the team has as well. You can also see the final comment there is that they've mentioned that they're a member of CHAS and they've achieved PAS 91 compliance. As part of this credentials process, we've also included an attachments form as well. Excuse me. And this allows Alan to attach any relevant documentation in support of this application. Once again, you can add additional requirements and additional attachments can be asked for as part of this onboarding process. Finally, we have the permit to work. So clicking on permit to work, we've set up a number of different work permits that the subcontractors can apply for. I'm just going to go through Hotworks for today. So I highlight the Hotworks permit and click on save. And then we've put in some extra information that needs to be captured in support of that application. So let's just say housing, and we're going to be welding steels. And then we just have a number of different drop downs that the user can work through when completing this form. I'll just complete the first two, but hopefully that gives you an example of the type of information we can capture against that permit. So clicking on save, I've returned to my job onboarding screen. I've got green confirmation ticks against all of those 4 stages, so I can go ahead now and request approval. So Alan has completed all of those steps. We get a confirmation that job onboarding has been complete. And this will then fire a notification back to Jenny at Contoso Construction to tell her that she can go into the main contractor app and review all of the information that Alan has been submitted. So let me just jump across to another screen now. Now what should happen, here we go, is that we have an approval task in Teams that's been generated. So we can see that the subcontractor has completed all of the work and Jenny's getting a notification. So the easiest way for Jenny to access the information is to click on the URL. This takes us back into the contractor app now, where she can review all of that information. So at a glance on the right hand side, she can see that the onboarding status for method statement, risk assessment, etc. is all completed because it's all highlighted there as completed in green. She can also view any attachments. So there's the dummy attachment that I put in for CHAS compliance. And then she can spend some time looking at all of the detailed information that Alan has submitted. So looking at the method statement tab, all of the information that was loaded into the app that Alan was working on is available in real time to Jenny, and she can work through each of those sections and make sure that she's happy with those responses. There's also more detail on the team at Steiner Steels that will be employed to do the work. So we have a list of 8 individuals from Steiner Steel that will be working on site. We have the risks brought through from the app as well, and she can focus on the initial risks and ensure that the residual risks are acceptable before allowing them to start the work. We also have opportunity to review the credentials information as well. So obviously she'd probably spend more time in the real world looking through all of that information, but let's assume that she's happy with that. So I'm going to go back to Teams and I'm going to click on approve. Okay, once that's been approved and Teams is already confirming that's happened, you can see I've got another notification. So now with my hat on as Alan Steiner again, I'm being told that my application has been approved and I now need to go ahead and review and complete induction activities. So I can click on that link and it takes me straight back into the app that I'm using. So the site induction activities, as you expect, can be accessed by clicking on the next tab here. Now we've just added some simple examples just to illustrate the types of things we can do here. But you can see that we've got, for example, a link to a sitemap. So if I click on that, what that's now going to load is what we've called the Hitachi Solutions onboarding portal. So this is a Power Page that we've built that will allow the subcontractors to access all the information they need before they even arrive on site. So what we're trying to do here is to make sure that they go through all of these onboarding activities online before they even approach the site. So when they arrive, they're ready to start work rather than having to go through some of these administrative tasks. So as I scroll down the subcontractor onboarding page, you can see we put in some dummy links. So we've got a very realistic looking sitemap with instructions on how to navigate through the site. A very informative picture on site entrance and exit points, but hopefully you get the idea that you can use these portals to add the relevant information that the subcontractors need to work through before you allow them to access the site. Also, you can see there you could upload videos as well, so that might be appropriate if you wanted to make them aware of any health and safety legislation they need to follow as well while they're working. So moving back to the app, Alan will work through each of those different requirements for site induction and confirm that he's been through all of them and they understand what needs to be done. At that point, everything is complete, and so Alan can click on complete induction, and that ends all of the activities that he needs to do before he can then arrive on site. So if I just go back to PowerPoint for a second, and let me just shoot through these screenshots, which you can take away with you afterwards. So now we've reached the point where I'll hand over to Jason, and he's going to be looking at how the subcontractors arrive on site and manage the task-based risks.
Thank you very much, John. I'm going to share my screen. Good afternoon all, Jason Almeida here. So I'm going to go through the scenario 2, which is focusing around site arrival and the task-based risk for this part of scenario 2, and then we've got a second part in a moment. So in terms of what we're going to cover, so fast forward to the day of the job. The site manager, Dan Jump, will have to review the day's jobs, and when Alan Steiner arrives on site with this team, Dan's going to have to review the information provided and activate the subcontractor permits for entry and work as well. Moving along, we're going to see how when a task-based risk is identified as part of Alan's work, he will have the ability to quickly log that, capture pictures, videos, etc., and submit it to Dan Jump wherever Dan is on the construction site. And this will be pushed to Dan, who can then review it and approve or reject the risk and mitigation submitted by Alan. So I'm going to start by going into the back office app that John was sharing earlier. And if we pretend that Alan has arrived on site, Dan can take this opportunity to review all the information submitted by Alan, so you can check that all the onboarding activities have been completed, induction has been completed. He can review things like the personnel, especially if there are subcontractors arriving. We can see there are 3 in this case. Review work permits and what is expected. And at this point, Dan can choose to activate the permit, which will then let the subcontractors proceed into the site. So I'm going to start by pressing the activate permit button. And what this does is it leverages Power Automate within the platform to automatically update these permits and site passes to an active status so that they can be used by the subcontractors. So if I give this a quick refresh, you can see that this has been approved along with a expiry date with a few days in the future. When we look at the personnel and give this another refresh as well, we can see that these have now been set to active, and they've got a start and expiry date as well. Now, as part of this process, the scenario we've mocked up is when the employees' details are captured, they are sent QR codes that will give them a mechanism to enter the site by scanning the QR code on kiosk app. So I'm going to move across to my iPad, which I've got on my screen on the side here. And you can see this could be, this is another sort of Power App on a tablet that could be sat on a kiosk at the site entrance office. And at this point, I've got my QR code that I sent through via email. A contractor can walk up to the screen, press the scan QR code button, and if I can find it will scan it and identify that, yes, my name is Jason Almeida. I'm a welder level 3, as we just saw on the screen. My pass expires on 6 December, and I can move on into the site to carry out the work. And with this little capability here, we can see how contractors can sort of enter the site in a very rapid fashion, given that their induction activities were covered off earlier through the Power Pages, and they've got a quick, easy way to access the site as well. So let me just minimize this for a moment. Now, fast forwarding on to when they need to offload the steels as part of this scenario, and Alan's team identify a task-based risk. Now, for this, I mentioned how Alan will have the ability to capture the risk along with photos and evidence using a mobile device. And for this, I've got a pre-recorded video, mainly because of the functionalities we want to show you. So I'm going to hit play and talk you through what's happening here. So Alan opens his task-based risk app. Now, Alan as a subcontractor might have access to several jobs on the same construction site, so he can use the mapping capability to pick the right job and proceed to create a risk for this job. He can capture 3 key bits of information, or 2 key bits, the information and the evidence, which is then submitted. So he can start by describing the risk that he's unable to access the site to offload the steels. And the impact of this risk is that, they're going to get delayed in time. If they do it from where they are, the steels could topple over, or the lifting equipment could get damaged as well. He can rate this risk if needed, and he can call out any mitigation measures, such as using an alternative entrance as well. Now, while capturing evidence, he can leverage the augmented reality markup capabilities within Power Apps to, take his camera, point it at the issue present, annotate it in real time, maybe drop a little pin to say this is the bit that's currently locked that I can't get access to, and he can take photos to get this evidence. He can then also take a regular photo if needed, and you can see there was an option to use either the front or back camera if needed. He can then describe these pictures, because once he submits this to Dan Jump, Dan needs some context around it. So this is what Alan is doing at this moment, and he can then proceed to submitting this task-based risk. So now that it's submitted, I'm going to go back to my iPad, and we will see a notification come through on the tablet where Dan Jump is somewhere on site, and he may not be at that location, so he needs immediate visibility of the risk that's been logged. Oh, there we go. So you can see a new task-based risk has been raised. So I'm going to tap that, and it's going to open my site management app. Oh, okay, let me go straight to that particular task-based risk. I believe it's this one here. So Dan Jump has received that notification. He's opened the risk that was raised, and he can see immediately the outcomes and the issue that's been raised, along with the mitigation methods, the risk rating that's more relevant to him, along with, most importantly, photos of the issue that's currently present as well. Now, if he is on site and he needs to see where exactly this is, part of the task-based risk captures the actual location of the issue, so he can sort of walk on over to that very specific point to speak to Alan directly if needed. Alternatively, he can just say, okay, I'm happy with the mitigation method, and say mitigation approved, and then he can proceed to sign his initials to confirm that he's happy with this and approve this particular task-based risk. And now Alan gets the notification, and he can proceed to site and reducing any sort of delay as part of Alan and his team's work throughout this process. I'm going to go back to the slides now, if you bear with me one moment, please. So we do have some screenshots once again for you to see this in the slide deck later on, but we'll move on to the second part of the scenario, which is once the work has commenced, a typical issue, which is a safety incident that can occur while the work is being performed. Now, in this specific scenario, we've got an employee who's working with Alan's team who gets injured during the seal installation job. At this point, Dan Jump needs to sort of arrive at the point of the incident, log details of the injury, the person, and any evidence as well, so that Jenny Williams, who's in the back office, can receive that incident report, perform an investigation, and develop a safety improvement plan if needed. So I'm going to go back to my iPad once again. And so Dan Jump arrives on at the site of the incident, and he can tap the "Someone is injured" button on his site management app. Now it gives him a very straightforward process to guide him through, to capture details of the incident, the person who's injured, the details of the injury, and then any evidence he wishes to upload. So we're going to capture details of the location. We'll leave the date of the incident as it is, and then describe the incident. So we can say that the employee sustained some burns. The containment actions, we can say that the equipment was tested. And we can say that this was not an act of crime in this instance. Apologies, guys, bear with me. We'll go on to the next stage, where we can now capture details of the person who was injured. Now, in this case, because it was an employee, we'll have them stored within the Power Platform and Dataverse. So we can just pick this employee from our list. We can say it was Neve who was injured. We can say she was an employee, and she sustained an injury that required hospital treatment. Now, in this instance, we can say that she sustained some burns to her left shoulder, and she also sustained burns to her left upper arm as well. And obviously, we can add additional injuries if needed, but we'll stick with this for now. And finally, we have the opportunity to capture evidence. My camera is sort of locked into my keyboard, but I can press the add button to add additional photos if needed. But I'm just going to press submit here to save this incident and let Jenny Williams proceed with her investigation. Now, as soon as it's been created, it's done in real time, and this incident number 1021 is now available within the back office health and safety app that I mentioned earlier. So we'll go switch personas into Jenny Williams, and let me swap my app. And I'll go into, so I was on the contractor app initially, and I'm going to go into my accident and incident management app, and let me give it a quick refresh. And you can see number 1021, the incident has now been captured. Now I'm going to go into this, and what I'm presented with is a process flow to walk me through the steps that need to be carried out, and I can see all of the information that is captured as well. So we can see details of the injury, the person. We can go in and look at the injuries as well. And we can now update this report to say, yes, this was an injury, and we can move on to the next stage. Now, as part of this stage, we will record the likelihood of this happening again. Since it's burns, it might be quite likely, and it is a high impact from a consequence perspective as well, because burns require significant levels of treatment. And once we save this record, we can see that using automation in the background, it can calculate based on the selection that this requires a level 3 investigation. Additionally, because this is an injury/illness, it will need to be escalated and passed on as part of the health and safety reporting. So you can see the calculated RIDDOR check is marked as yes as well. Now we can move on and decide, okay, we agree with this level of investigation, so we'll select this as level 3 and move on to the next step. We can now perform the investigation where we can use a series of fields. Now, within this proof of concept, we've captured a set of fields, but again, this can vary either based on the incident type that's captured, so it is more dynamic in nature, so it's more specific to the type of injury, or specific fields to your business process. You can also capture witness statements at this point as well, or within the app if needed. So let's say we fill out these investigation fields, and then we proceed into the devising of a safety improvement plan. Now, once again, we have devised a set of fields to support the creation of a safety improvement plan by capturing information here. And then once this is created, you can leverage the template capability within the Power Platform to create this as an output document, which can then be shared with everybody who's on that site for them to read and adhere to going forward. And at the very end, we can then close this this safety incident since our investigation and safety improvement plan have now been completed. If I go back to my slides, and once again, we do have a few screenshots there for you to review later on. And I'm now going to pass on back to John to cover the last element of our showcase around works completion.
Thanks, Jason. Can you see my screen right, Jason?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so to wrap up, we're just going to talk about works completion and how we've put together the applications to support this process. So one of Alan Steiner's team, so a member of the subcontractors team, is going to use the portal to record some time to cover what their activities on site during the day. That time is then going to be reviewed by Dan Jump, and all this is going to happen through the Power Apps that we've just seen now. So to show that in action, let me go back to my apps. Just one second. Oh, it's over here. So on the subcontractor onboarding app that I showed you earlier, we've also built in the ability for subcontractors to record time. So you can see we've got a couple of options to create new time entries or to review their existing time entries as well. Now you can see that I've logged on as an individual called Kamal. So this is one of the team that we registered as part of the Steiner Steel subcontractor team. And we have the ability to provide these users with logins and passwords so they can access restricted parts of the subcontractor portal to do these types of activities. So now that I've logged in as Kamal, I can click on the new time entry form. And this is just a very simple, straightforward log of time. So on the job that I want to record my time to, I've been using job 51 as the example today. So if I look for 51, and there's my installation of steel beams, I can select that. And then I just need to tell the system when I started work in the morning. Now, one of the things we considered doing when we were putting this together, and something that Jason showed you as well, is that we've also got clock in and clock out functionality as part of the solution that we've designed. So it would also be possible for that clock in and clock out activity to automatically generate a time entry for you as well. But for this, we're just sticking to a good old-fashioned manual time entry. And let me just put in the end time as well. So let's just, for speed, say that finished at 5 p.m. That will do. It's got my subcontractor name already, so I can click on submit. That brings me back to all of the existing time entries that have been recorded as well. But for Dan Jump, who's responsible for reviewing all of this time, that can be done back on the main contractor app. So once again, I'm looking at the job 51, the steel beam installation, and there's another tab on this job called time entries. If I go to time entries, and let me just refresh that screen and go back to time entries, there you can see the time entry that I've just created for the 1st of December, 8 o'clock till 5:44. And also, this will give me a running total on the number of hours that have been booked to this job. So for Dan now, we could build in an approval process for that time to be approved, and we could post that. And this could also form the basis of a check that comes in to validate that the invoices that Alan Steiner are sending in to us corresponds to all the activities that his team have been doing. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what we can do with that time information once we've captured it against the job. So that was a very quick final view of another way that we can use the Power Platform to support these processes. If I just go back to PowerPoint now, just to summarize what we've shown you today. So I started off with our pre-works contractor collaboration, and that showed you how Jenny could initiate a job request that went through to a subcontractor. The subcontractor logged into the app, carried out all of the activities that they needed to do. Jenny reviewed that information and approved it, and all that went on with a couple of apps, all controlled by workflow and authorization steps. So really moving away from maybe a paper-based process where it's hard to keep track of what people are doing in that process as well. Then Jason took on scenario 2, which was all to do with how you manage site arrival, how you can control people that have access to sites. Then looked at task-based risk assessment and some pretty cool features about using cameras and markup to actually help identify the location of a task-based risk, and also getting approval before you can continue work. And the next part of that scenario was to then go through the safety incident process. And once again, all of that can be built within the Power Platform. And then finally, I just quickly showed you how we could capture some time recording activities from the subcontractors and then push that back into the job requirements, so all of that data is held together in a single place against the job. So that's everything that we're going to show you in terms of demonstrations. I'm now going to hand you back to John Brereton just to wrap up the session today.
That's great. Thanks, John. Slide, please.
Yep, sorry, I should still be sharing, shouldn't I? Let me go back.
That's all right.
There you go.
Thanks. That's great. So thanks, guys, and thanks for rattling through it. We've been able to get through it with 10 minutes left. We'll be able to take a few questions in a moment. So we just wanted to finish off by having shown off the power of what you can do with these apps, and we've probably got twice as many as this that deal with on-site situations for construction. We've got some that we use in the US as well as here. We've got things like the time capture apps can be linked to geolocation tracking on your phone. In fact, you could also use a geofence effectively to log people on and off site if you're somewhere where that's practical. So there's lots of different things you can do. We like this set that we've shown you today just because there's a flow through so that it makes sense, hopefully, as we go through the process. But you may possibly have already seen some of the Power Platform before today. You may have already started using it. You might be interested, or you might be brand new to it. What we'll say is there are a number of things we can do to help you get off the ground or to help you move forward. A lot of our clients will build relatively simple apps themselves and might come for help if they're building something more complex. And we can see on the screen, I'm not going to talk through all of these, but we've got a whole series of packages that are designed to help you move forward. If you're established, we can help you perhaps set up a center of excellence about how to provide what we might think of as guide rails for users in your business that are putting apps together to help with data loss prevention and to make sure that people are taking advantage of each other's skills as they go forward. And then from the beginning, we've got packages that will help you get started and learn how to configure some of these apps yourselves. So obviously, we'd be really interested in helping you move forward if we can. And just another thing to add is that over the next week or so, if you're in a position where you already have the Power Platform environment set up, we can let you have these apps just to use as effectively a starter and work with these to move forward, just as examples maybe, and tailor them on yourselves and using your own right. They've not been built to pretend to be completely finished products that slot into a system. They've been built as examples, and therefore you're welcome to use them and take them on and tinker with them, because each site's process might be slightly different even within a single contractor. So the ability to tailor these is probably really useful to you. So that pretty much wraps up that area.